Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, text 43 to 45, and chapter entitled What Prahlad learned in the womb. Please repeat. Kaman kamayate kamyair kaman kamayate kamyair yad artham iha purusha yad artham iha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai
Savai
Dehastu Parakyo
Parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Banguru
Branguro
Yati
Yati
Upaiti
Upaiti
Cha
Cha
Banguru Yati Upaiti Cha
Branguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Kaman Kamayate Kamyai
Kaman Kamayate Kamyai
Yadartam Iha Purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Banguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Branguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Please repeat.
Kaman kamayate kamyai
Kaman Kamayate Kamyai
Jadartam iha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai dehastu parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Anguro yatyupaitita
Branguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Kaman kamayate kamye
Kaman Kamayate Kamyai
Yadartamiya purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai dehastu parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Banguro yati upaiti cha
Branguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Kaman kamayate kamyai
Kaman kamayate kamyai
Yadatam iha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai dehastu parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Branguro yatyupaiti cha
Branguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Kaman Kamayate Kamye
Kaman Kamayate Kamye
Yadatam iha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Banguru Yati Upati Cha
Banguru Yati Upaiti Cha
Kaman kamayate kamye
Kaman Kamayate Kamye
Yadatam iha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai dehastu parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Branguro yatyupaiti cha
Banguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Para
Kaman kamayate kampai
Kaman Kamayate Kamye
Yadartamiha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai dehastu parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Banguru yati upaiti cha
Banguru Yati Upaiti Cha
Kaman kamayate kanye
Kaman Kamayate Kamye
Yadarthamiha purusha
Yadatam iha purusha
Savai dehastu parakyo
Savai Dehastu Parakyo
Banguro yatyupaiti cha
Banguro Yati Upaiti Cha
Synonyms. Kaman
Kaman
Things for sense gratification.
things for sense gratification.
Kamayate
Kamayate
One desires.
one desires.
Kamyair
Kamyai
by different desirable actions.
by different desirable actions.
Yat
Yat
of which.
of which
Artham
Artham
for the purpose
for
of.
the purpose of
Iha
Iha
in this material world.
in this material world.
Purusha
Purusha
the living entity.
the living entity.
Saha
Saha
that. By
Indeed
Neham
Deha
body.
body
To belongs to others,
belongs to others.
in parentheses, the dogs, vultures, etc. Bhangura, perishable. Yati, goes away. Upaiti, embraces the spirit soul.
Embraces the spirit soul.
Cha,
Cha,
and. Translation. A living entity desires comfort for his body and makes many plans for this purpose. But actually, the body is the property of others. Indeed, the perishable body embraces the living entity and then leaves him aside. This is a very short purport. Everyone desires comfort for his body and tries to make a suitable situation for this purpose, forgetting that the body is meant to be eaten by dogs, jackals, or moths, and thus turned into useless stool, ashes, or earth. The living entity wastes his time in a futile attempt to gain material possessions for the comfort of one's body after another, for the comfort of one body after another. So we're going to read text 44 and 45 because we have very short purports. So, Kim Urvaita Pratya Daraga Dhananadaya Rajakosha Rajamatya Vrityakta Mamataspada. Since the body itself is ultimately meant to become stool or earth, what is the meaning of the paraphernalia related to the body, such as wives, residences, wealth, children, relatives, servants, friends, kingdoms, treasuries, animals, or ministers? They are also temporary. What more can be said about this? Text 45. Kimitarat manastu chai sahade manasvanai anantairat artha sankarsai nityananda rasodhade. All this paraphernalia is very near and dear as long as the body exists. But as soon as the body is destroyed, all things related to the body are also finished. Therefore, actually, one has nothing to do with them, but because of ignorance, one accepts them as valuable. Compared to the ocean of eternal happiness, they are most insignificant. What is the use of such insignificant relationships for the eternal living being? That is a very short purport. Krishna consciousness, devotional service to Krishna, is the ocean of eternal bliss. In comparison to this eternal bliss, the so-called happiness of society, friendship, and love is simply useless and insignificant. One should therefore not be attached to temporary things. One should take to Krishna consciousness and become eternally happy. End of purport. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vistam Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Swakaparantikam Deham Shivadam Shantara Kamalam Shivadam Vaishnavamscha Shrirupam Sarvajatam Sadhanam Tam Sajnam Svavadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sadhanam Krishna Karuna Sandham Mandur Tattatam Chalagurayam Radhe Vrindavanashwari Shavano Sute Devi Hari Hari Manchakalpatarubhascha Kripasindhudevacha Patitanam Pavanyo Vaishnavyo. So we're
One thing, you need to put that thing over your ears, there's a part of it. Right, yeah. And then the little thing, yeah, that thing should come around and in front of your mouth.
okay.
Yeah, now it works.
All right. so we're continuing listening. Prahlada is still explaining to his friend what is Krishna consciousness all about. And one way to convince someone of something new is to show them that what they have is not that great after all. Usually people are attached to what they have, and therefore they are not so open to taking to Krishna consciousness. So here in these verses, Prahlada Maharaj is telling them the truth of what they actually have. And in this verse in particular, saying, even your own body doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the dogs and the jackals, and those who will benefit from it once you're dead. So then he explains, and therefore anything related to this body, since your own body doesn't belong to you, anything related to your body is also meaningless, because it's completely temporary. As long as we have a body and we have children or wife or friends or parents, but as soon as we lose this body, then all these relationships don't mean anything anymore, and you're just like just a lump of flesh. You know, sometimes they're either turned into ashes or you're buried, and then the little worms will eat you, and then you become earth again, or you become ashes, ashes to ashes, earth to earth. So this is the reality of the temporary nature of this material world, and the temporary nature of our lives, basically. So Prahlada Maharaj is stressing, and then he's saying, you know, in the next verse he's speaking about wealth, all these things that we spend so much valuable time gathering, trying to become influential, trying to become powerful, trying to become rich, trying to become attractive in some way or other. Prabhupada says Prahlada Maharaj tells his friends, this is simply a waste of time. Because in 1 second, everything that you worked so hard for your entire life to accumulate is finished. It's gone. There is no more. It has no meaning. So, and then he says, what else can I say about this? So he's already said so much about it, and he's basically stressing the point of the temporary nature of this world. He says, you know, why waste our time for these temporary things that cannot really bring us happiness? We should rather take part in Krishna consciousness, and he uses this very nice word, Nityananda Premadade, which is interesting because Premananda Rasodade, the nectarian ocean of eternal bliss. So rather than wasting our time in this temporary material, in trying to enjoy our senses in this material world, we should use all our energy to enter and to take part in this eternally blissful ocean of nectar. So this is usually the way we preach. We don't just say, negate, everything is bad, everything is bad, everything is bad. We have a very positive alternative always, and we can see that Prahlada Maharaj is doing this. He's saying, yes, the reality is we are in this material world, and we're going to suffer. It's a world of suffering because it's temporary, and when we have to leave, it will be extremely painful for us and for anybody related to us. But if we use our energy if we join this Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada says, the Krishna consciousness, the emotional service of Krishna, is the ocean of eternal bliss. Prabhupada immediately he says, this is Krishna consciousness movement. Then, you know, we will be happy because we understand we are taking our happiness from an eternal source. That source will never perish. And sometimes they're talking about now in the world there's a danger of the petrol is going to finish Or they're talking about further later on, there'll be no more sweet water. They're saying, But so in the same way, because these are perishable sources, there's a limit to it. If we don't, if we abuse it constantly, one day will come it's finished. So, but it is not the case with transcendental bliss or Krishna consciousness. If we source our happiness from the right source, it is eternal, and it's compared to an ocean. Shri Shri Radha Parishishwara ki jai. Sharana Parishwara ki jai. So, so it says, compared to this ocean of eternal bliss, whatever so-called happiness we can find in this world is completely insignificant. It has no, you can't even compare it. It's just very insignificant. So this is what we've been hearing for a few days, and this is what Prahlada Maharaj is. This is how Prahlada Maharaj is convincing his little demon friends that they should not only they should reject what they have learned so far was the goal of life. They should take to Krishna consciousness, which is what everybody is preaching against. So Prahlada Maharaj is creating a revolution actually. in his low school, in his Gurukula, he's going to create a revolution, and it's going to ultimately bring down Hiranyakashipu's empire. I mean, it's a small. It looks like a little insignificant children talking in the during the break. This is actually what's going on. They're not, the teachers are not there now, so most probably the kids are in their break, like in their little recess. And Prahlada Maharaj is not interested in playing with them. And then he explains to them why he's not interested in playing, I don't know, marbles or whatever, or with the ball or whatever they might have been playing with. And then he explains to them, I have learned this from my teacher. And, I derive so much more happiness from Krishna consciousness, therefore I am not attracted to these things. And then he's going to create a nice Sankirtan group, and it's going to come to the ears of Hiranyakashipu, and he's going to commit many offenses, and actually that's what brings him down. The offenses he commits to Prahlada Maharaj, even though externally he's his son, Prahlada Maharaj is a very exalted, advanced devotee. And Hiranyakashipu, that's actually what makes him fall down. That he starts trying to hurt this little boy, devotee. So there's a very big lesson in this, is that we have to be extremely wary of hurting other devotees. Not just openly being offensive, but sometimes we might even unadvertently, or without really meaning to, we might hurt some devotees' feelings. And we actually don't know the position of each devotee. Externally they may look like very simple devotee, he's Bhakta, Jojo, he just joined 3 weeks ago, but we don't know really who he is. We don't know what is his connection, or what is his relationship with Krishna. So we should be extremely cautious how we address them, or how we don't address them. Sometimes we might hurt someone if we don't address them also. Sometimes we might, by omission, So this is, and this is actually the only thing that can stop us, that can stop the devotional service right in its track. There's nothing can stop it and diminish it. But if we commit Vaishnava Aparad, or we hurt some devotees' feelings, then Krishna takes this very seriously. So, so this is one of the many things to be learned. Of course, the whole Hiranyakashipu pastime it's a pastime, and it has been arranged like this. Lord Vishnu, he wanted to have a good fight. He said, oh, I'm in Vaikuntha, everybody's always just worshipping me and glorifying me. I would really like to test something different. I would really like to see what it feels like to have good fight. So, this whole pastime is arranged and many things, but Krishna does many things at the same time. It might look like this was just a sport, but it was an arrangement so Lord Nishingadev could appear. It was an arrangement so we could have these teachings from Prahlada Maharaj. It was also an arrangement so that everybody involved in this story could learn so many things. This is the beauty, and this is the wonder of Krishna. He doesn't just do one thing. In every whatever is happening, whoever is involved in whatever is happening has been specifically designed for each and every one of us to learn something or to take something away from each experience. So and also I thought one thing that's very interesting to think about is Prahlada Maharaj was 5 years old, and this is in Satya Yuga, so they lived 100,000 years. So now we consider a 5-year-old boy very small, in the beginning of his life. We only live 100 years. Back then, they lived 10,000 years. So a 5-year-old is a baby, and he's already so realized, and he's giving this teaching. So it's very interesting to look at it from that point of view, how he was realized, and also his eagerness to share it with others. This is also a very nice characteristic of a devotee. He's not satisfied just knowing or just having his own relationship with Krishna. The devotee wants to share it, he wants to preach. And we see a similar case in, Vyasadeva. He wrote so many scriptures and so many things, but he felt unsatisfied. There's something still missing. And then Narada Muni told him, you haven't shared with the people how to become Krishna conscious. You haven't given them the possibility of obtaining the ultimate goal of life. You have given them a maze with all these mantras and tantras and yantras. They're going to be lost in there forever. They cannot attain Krishna. You have to write another work so that they are able to attain the ultimate goal of life. And then he was fulfilled, then he was satisfied. And also, we see it in Prabhupada's own life. He was sitting in Radha Damodar temple, and his spiritual master told him to preach in the English language, but he specifically told him to write in English. He was doing that. He was translating Srimad Bhagavatam, he was writing the Back to Godhead magazine. But he had this very, he needed to go out, he needed to go to America and preach. And I think we have, as a movement, we have inherited this responsibility. And we should go out. we should listen, we should study, we should read, we should chant. And then we should go out and share with others. This is Prabhupada's movement. We should not just stay in Vrindavan and become bhajananandis. This was not what Prabhupada wanted. Prabhupada wanted us to preach. And many of Prabhupada's disciples have this, we can see, they don't stay. One example comes to mind is Jayapataka Swami. He is basically, he cannot walk, he cannot talk, he cannot eat, sleep, drink, but whenever he has an opportunity, he goes out and he preaches. And if he cannot go out, then he uses the internet. And if he cannot use the internet, he finds a way. If he cannot talk, he trained a devotee to talk for him. And like this, he's a very extreme example, but there's many Prabhupada disciples and grand disciples who have this fire burning within them, and they cannot just sit in one place and just enjoy their sadhana or whatever. They have to go out and preach. Even in our Sasel temple, we have a small Sankirtan group, and you're always very eager to go. Anyways, time, place, and circumstance. Right now, we're a bit tied up. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you both for helping out so much on the altar. I very much appreciate it. I know that you prefer to be in the first row of the battle, and it's very important. But I very much appreciate now that we are two men down. Sudarshan Prabhu is down, and we have Krishna Prasad Mataji who is also down. So you two stepped up and are helping very nicely. So I just,
Thank you.
this is also Prabhupada's mood, that we do the needful. Whatever is needed we don't really have a hat. I am this or I'm that. If we need to go out and distribute books, we do it. If we need to clean toilets, we clean toilets. Whatever is needed to keep the movement running. This is, Prabhupada taught us like that. He himself did it also. We can see in the early days when he was in New York, he used to cook for his young boys and girls that were showing some interest. He started giving classes, and a few people were coming, and some became regulars. And then he started cooking for them, and they used to come for lunch every day, eat. Umapati Prabhu told me. So they used to come, sit down and eat, and say, "Thank you very much, Swamiji." They would all get up and leave. And he specifically said the first time Prabhupada held initiation, it was Janmashtami, and it was late at night, and they had a fire yagya in the small storefront, and everybody was throwing the grain, swaha, swaha. And then Umapati Swami said he got initiated in short jeans. He said they were short because they were broken, so he just cut them. Then they all stood up and said, "Thank you very much, Swamiji." They left the mess like this, and they left. They had absolutely no idea of and Prabhupada never said anything. Prabhupada cleaned up everything and cooked for them the next day and cleaned the kitchen after they left. And they were saying that they used to make competitions. Who can eat more? And there were some boys who could eat even 20 chapatis. And Prabhupada was making all these chapatis. You have to think about it. A lot of work. Prabhupada was, and one day, Kirtanananda, he said, "Swamiji, do you need some help?" Prabhupada said, "Oh, finally." Finally somebody. Anyway, and then after that, pretty much Prabhupada taught him how to cook, and he did most of the cooking. But Prabhupada used to shop. He used to go sell books to get money so he could go shopping. Then he used to bring this boga home, cook for all these boys, and then clean up after them and start again the next day. So anyway, Prabhupada, through his own example, he showed us that he did the needful. And then like that, he attracted a few boys and girls. And within this first group, there were some very important devotees who later went on to open up different centers in different parts of the world, and this is how it was born. So I very much sometimes feel that we're at the beginning here again in Paris. We all have to do what we can to keep it running. And if we are sincere and we really try to apply Prabhupada's program, and without any personal motives or then, Prabhupada is going to send some sincere young people who are then going to do something big. We're just going to be able to facilitate their coming, and then they're going to do something big. So I think this is, they say history repeats itself. So if we follow Prabhupada's movement, Prabhupada is very much with us. And if we follow his program, then he has the potency of creating what has already been created again and again and again. So we have to have very strong faith in that if we just stick to Prabhupada's program very sincerely and try to please him, actually, because we cannot do much more than that. We can just try to please Prabhupada in whatever little way we can. And he will do the rest. We don't really have to. He will send the right people, he will send capable people, and then, you know, it will take on from there. So I think I will, and oh, it's still early.
Sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about Ekadashi today, that Prahlada Maharaj is speaking about how all this sense gratification and everything is temporary. And we do practice detachment, we do follow certain things to practice. But then on top of it, we have Ekadashi, which is one day, another opportunity to remind us that, you know, what is really the purpose of our life. So we diminish our bodily needs, we eat less. You know, the idea is that by diminishing the bodily needs, then we have more time to dedicate to chanting, reading. And there's a very funny story. One day, Prabhupada was in Mayapur and it was Ekadashi. Suddenly he came out and there was nobody there. All his disciples were gone, so he asked, where are they? He said, oh Prabhupada, they're feeling tired because they're fasting. And Prabhupada said, what is this fasting? Tell them all to come, sit down and eat. And he said, we need to have energy for Krishna consciousness. So this was Prabhupada's mood. He was very practical. He was not interested in personal fasting, or he just wanted us to be strong and to preach. This was his line. But anyway, it's one day that we can take some time to think about it and try to do something extra and try to be a little bit more austere and diminish our bodily comfort, so to say, a little more.
I always like to repeat this. It's in the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada has given many explanations about Ekadashi, but I remember I read this statement. It's in the Nectar of Devotion many years ago. He said Ekadashi means to minimize the gross and subtle demands of the body and concentrate more on the activities of the self, you know, the soul, the spiritual activity. I thought it was so profound how he said it. But it's true, he would say, sometimes he would say Ekadashi is the most auspicious day. Because the devotees would think it's not auspicious because
we have to fast.
He said, no, it's most auspicious. And fasting means feasting too. So he had you know, he liked to, like you said, he wants to see that we are engaged in Krishna service. Just as he was, fully engaged. And something else you were saying earlier, on the material world, there's no, you know, happy, there's no pleasure here. I was hearing a tape and Prabhupada said that Lord Chaitanya used to listen to the poems, the writings of Vidyapati. And he said Vidyapati wrote something very nice. He said he approached it from a different point. He said, the material world, yes, there is happiness here, there is pleasure here. He said like that about the material world. He said, but it is like a drop of water in the desert. If you're in the desert where it's, you know, sand and hot and you're very thirsty, there's no water, and somebody said, here's some water, and yeah, and you open your mouth and he puts one drop. That's not going to satisfy you. You're going to be he said you want a river, you want so much water when you're in the desert. So the pleasure that you can get here by harmony, it doesn't satisfy you. And this was Vidyapati, his contribution. He said, yeah, there is pleasure, but it's just like a drop of fruit in your mouth. So, thank you very much. And you don't know if this man is coming to cook. He didn't come last Friday.
No, I will call Ramada Prabhu and find out. Otherwise,
Because last time
we
he
have
didn't
to.
come. No, yes, last time Krishna Machaya said, if he doesn't come, she will come and cook.
Yeah.
And I see you all started cutting vegetables and stuff. Make it real easy.
Yeah. She's directing everybody, even though she's not supposed to. Cool.
Thank you very much, Mataji. If I may ask two questions. One is regarding this fasting. When I came to Devotees Association, I heard about this, that Ekadashis were diminishing body.
Minimizing.
Yeah, and eating less and chanting more. But later I heard that Prabhupada said, what is this fasting? Ekadashi is feasting. And then devotees take a feast. So it's different points of view.
No, the idea is that devotees were becoming very morose. Oh, today's a cottage. Oh, what are we going to eat? So then Prabhupada said, and weak also. So Prabhupada said, no, feasting means fasting. We have to understand that he was bringing something very new and introducing it to a bunch of people. We had no culture, no idea what all this is about. And actually it's, now it's very fashionable to do intermittent fast. And so many other new age things people do. Intermittent fast. You didn't hear about it. You're not in new age
He
things.
doesn't need to hear about fasting.
Anyway, it's very fashionable. Many people do it now. And like big celebrities and everybody. But back then, being a vegetarian was very austere. What you're going to eat, you're going to die. Fasting, on top of that, not only you're a vegetarian, but you fast on some days. And on top of that, every month for 2 days, you don't eat grains, So, because it was so ingrained in some devotees, then it was a bit austere for them. So Prabhupada had to say, no, it means feasting. So then he introduced, there's some Gaudiya Mats, they don't understand why we eat carrots and so many other vegetables, because in India they have a very strict Ekadashi, but Prabhupada, he made it easier for us, so that we wouldn't be morose. This doesn't mean that on Ekadashi we should spend 5 hours in the kitchen making a big Ekadashi feast. We should try and just keep the body and soul together and spend more time to do essential things. But if your mind becomes disturbed by eating just boiled carrots, then you can eat something more. And the idea is that we should try and create a favorable environment so we can concentrate in chanting and hearing. So if you are hungry, you cannot concentrate on anything. Or if you're tired also, you cannot do it. But we try to be conscious. It's just like a reminder, like, why we're here and what we should be doing. So different devotees do it in different ways. It's all okay, I think, as long as the principle is there that this day is meant to do more service or to hear more and chant more. Whatever you can do to facilitate that is.
It is known as the day of Hari. Ekadashi is the day of Hari. Krishna himself doesn't fast, but his servants, which he did. But we need to, even Prabhupada told a story that his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta, he was so pushing them to go out and preach that one day he was told that one of the brahmacharis wasn't going out, and it was Ekadashi. And he said, why isn't he going out? So he's too weak, Prabhupada, they call him Prabhupada. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, tell him take 2 chapatis and go out and preach. And they were like shocked because it was Ekadashi. But the preaching was so, Prabhupada learned this from him, so he pushed, you should preach, you should go out and preach. And Bhaktisiddhanta even to the extreme point of telling the disciples you should take 2 chapatis and go out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prabhupada inherited this do the needful mood from his spiritual master.
So much. You know when, another point, another little Bhaktisiddhanta tidbit. He sent a few devotees, 2 or 3 sannyasis to England to preach. And he was giving him ideas what he wants to do. He was saying the ideas publicly, you know, with many devotees around. He said, and he wanted to have a hostel, like create a place in London where the English people would come to hear Krishna consciousness, because there was no temple or anything like that. But the hostel was an idea that a place where people could stay. Just like there's in America, not only America, around the world, there's the YMCA, Young Men's Christian, they create a place for people to stay and they feed them, and of course you have to hear them preach. But he was saying we could do this, and then Bhaktisiddhanta added, I'm prepared to even sell meat if the Englishmen won't come. And Prabhupada said some of his disciples, some of Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples, their eyes, they couldn't believe that Bhaktisiddhanta was saying this. And he says, he saw that and he says, I thought about this many lifetimes ago. So he had such a determination to preach, and it's because of that, he created a disciple like Prabhupada who listened and imbibed it and then tried to give it to us. So there is a goal, there's a purpose to it. Otherwise, we're not so much interested in the austerities. Like you say, you mentioned Gaudiya Math, some of their people, they have so many things that they're very strict on. When I was doing my restaurant in time, these were some Western devotees, but they were involved with the Gaudiya Math group, and they came and it was Ekadashi, and they said, what can we eat here? So you can eat anything you want. It's pretty clear. But your subject, you have carrots in it, and you have this in it. And I said, so what's wrong with that? So you don't do this on the Ekadashi, so maybe you don't. And I realized they have a different outlook, a different conception, how they were. But Prabhupada was much more liberal. But like, if someone says, Prabhupada, I heard that you should fast all day on the Ekadashi, he said, yes, you can. But he didn't push that. He said no grains. And everybody was okay. And it turns out on the Ekadashi days, we'd have some of the best feasts. We make these preparations, and amazing. When I was in Mayapur, there was one devotee, she invited me to come for lunch. And when I went, there was like 12 different preparations.
Yeah, it's very common.
Yeah, and I said,
Ekadashi is even more.
this is Ekadashi. And she said, yes, she said, and Ekadashi somehow I like, I get inspired to cook more. Do more. Wow. Anyway, these are all, you have to harmonize these things with doing the needful.
Yeah, the principle is that we should do some more extra. Oh, we should do some more service and spend more time and less time on however you're able to do that for you. I mean, Prabhupada has given us that leniency. So if you need to eat carrots, if you need to stand on one leg, whatever works, whatever floats your boat, they say. Whatever helps you to remember Krishna a little more today. Yes. There's some special benefits if you do it on Ekadashis, then you have some special benefits. So it will help you more. So it's all little incentives Krishna gives so that we try to be a little more sincere, force ourselves a little more. Okay, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Gandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai. Srimad Prabhupada.